time for this month's book special, and this time we're taking a deep dive on one of Stephen King's most recurring and evil characters. Yep, we're going in on the Dark Man. It's a special on Randall Flagg. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Dave My Son, at Dave My Son on Instagram. This is the place where I talk to you about all things Stephen King. Now, if you come here week to week, you'll know that I'm still working my way through the movies and adaptations of King's works. But once a month, I stop off that train, switch platforms, and get back on the books and bring you a book special. And this is this month's book special, and as I've already said, it's a deep dive on the Dark Man. We're talking about Randall Flagg. And if you like my Randall Flagg Nirvana mashup t-shirt, then you can find more of those in my range of Stephen King themed band shirts, links in the description. And hey, while I'm plugging stuff, why not check out my award-winning collection of short stories, Once More Around the Sun. And if you like what I'm doing on this channel, consider becoming a member, become a constant viewer. You get loads of cool stuff. The link's below. See what you think of it. And if nothing else, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss anything in the future, okay? So this special then, very similar to the special I did on Holly Gibney back in 2024. Going to talk a bit about who Randall Flagg is, where he came from, what sort of character he is. Going to go through the books and stories that we see him in. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Randall Flagg on screen as well. I'm going to try and keep this as spoiler free as possible. So this is just a helpful guide for you to know a bit more about who the Dark Man is and where you might be able to read about him. And as always, let me know what you think. Do you like Randall Flagg? Is he a compelling villain for you? What's your favourite iteration of Flagg? Are there instances of Flagg popping up in Stephen King's works that I haven't covered in this special? Are there instances where you see something that you think is the Dark Man? Let me know. I would absolutely love to hear from you. Okay, let's get cracking then. Here's Randall Flagg. Okay, let's dig into Randall Flagg's history then. He's a character who we first meet properly in The Stand, but where did he come from? Where did the idea for him happen in Stephen King's mind? Is he based on a real person, for example? That's what I want to dig into in this first section of this video. So I'm actually contradicting myself because technically it's not true to say he first appeared in The Stand. The idea for Flagg lodged itself in King's mind when he wrote the poem The Dark Man. Now this was a poem he wrote in college and was first printed in Ubris, which I think was his college literary magazine in 1969, and then it was reproduced in 2013 in this edition from Cemetery Dance. So this is a poem about a dark man who's traveling the country and admits to rape and murder and all kinds of horrible stuff. But this is definitely what gave King the initial idea for the character that would become Randall Flagg. There was also ideas taken from real life. So King was very much inspired by the man Donald DeFreeze, who was kind of the lead person in charge of the Patty Hearst kidnapping, which had inspired a lot of his thinking early on when he was planning The Stand in the 70s. So according to King, he remembered DeFreeze and wrote a description of him just saying Donald DeFreeze is a dark man. So again, all feeds into this same idea. So I wanted to pick out a few quotes that King has gone on record of saying about Flagg because I think they offer a lot of interesting insight into who this character is. So for those of you who are perhaps new to this, Randall Flagg is a recurring villain in Stephen King's works. But here's what King himself has said about Flagg. So King has said that Flagg is somebody who's very charismatic, laughs a lot, is tremendously attractive to men and women both, and is somebody who just appeals to the worst in all of us. He's also said, I think the devil is probably a pretty funny guy. Flagg is like the archetype of everything that I know about evil, going back all the way to Charles Starkweather in the 50s. He is somebody who is empty and who has to be filled with other people's hates, fears, resentments, laughs. Flagg, Koresh, Jim Jones, Hitler, they're all basically the same guy. So King also acknowledges that while Flagg might appear differently to different people, his core message to people is the same, and that's something along the lines of, I know all the things that you want and I can give them to you, and all you have to do is give me your soul. I mean, for me, Randall Flagg is as much an agent of chaos as anything else. I mean, sure, he is evil, he is deadly, he is horrible, but he also revels in just stirring things up and then seeing what he can get out of the melee that ensues. And that's really important to remember when you're thinking about Flagg. Now, in terms of the description of Flagg, we get various descriptions of him, but the best one is Tom Cullen's description of him in The Stand, which I'm going to read for you right now because it is chef's kiss. So this is when Tom is in a trance and Stu Redman asks him what the Dark Man looks like. He says, "He looks like anybody you see on the street, but when he grins, birds fall dead off of the telephone lines. When he looks at you a certain way, your prostate goes bad and your urine burns. The grass yellows up and dies where he spits. He's always outside. He came out of time. He doesn't know himself. He has the name of 1,000 demons. His name is Legion. He's afraid of us. We're inside. He knows magic. He can call the wolves and live in the crows. But he's afraid of us. He's afraid of inside." That's Randall Flagg. Okay, so we've been talking about Randall Flagg, but as any constant readers will know, that's not the only name that this guy uses. This is where we see Randall Flagg pop up time and time again in different works, because King has a habit of dropping us characters that have the initials RF, and there are also lots of other monikers for Randall Flagg across King's works. So I thought it was worth in this special capturing some of those aliases so you can keep an eye out for him. So here's a list of names I've spotted over my reading. There might be more. Do let me know if I've missed any. But let's go through the notes. So we also see Flagg as the Ageless Stranger, the Walkin Dude, the Dark Man, the Hard Case, the Man in Black, the Tall Man. Lloyd Henreid calls him the Midnight Rambler. Glenn Bateman calls him the Adversary. Tom Cullen calls him the Grinning Man. Ratty Owens calls him Old Creeping Judas. We have the Covenant Man, which is in Wind Through the Keyhole. In The Stand itself, when he goes to Mountain City, he is Richard Fry. When he goes to New York City, he's Robert Frank. When he's in Georgia, he's Ramsey Forrest. He's also known as Robert Fremont, Richard Fremantle, Russell Faraday, the Man with No Face, and as we've just heard by Tom Cullen, Legion. And then in other works, we see him as Richard Fannin, Raymond Fiegler, Walter O'Dim, Martin Broadcloak, Walter Paddock, Walter Hodgie, Bill Hitch, and Reverend Flagg. And then there's a couple more. So in the Gwendy's books, we have Richard Farris. And King and Richard Chismar, have both said that this was meant to be a version of Flagg. But since then, King has realised that perhaps Richard Farris is more from the white, more from the good side. So he said that he's less convinced, but he said it was too late to change the initials at that point. I mean, I'm not entirely convinced by that because I think, tapping into this Agent of Chaos thing, I think that is a version of Flagg who is putting the temptation of what the button box can do right in front of us and pushing a good human to see exactly what they will do and what might happen if they give in to temptation. I think he's just having fun with it and thinks it's a big old giggle. There was also the short story Finn, where the characters are trying to track down a boy called Bobby Feeney. And of course, Bobby is short for Robert Feeney, RF. That is a stretch, but it jumped out at me the first time I read that story, so I'm going to throw it here. And actually, while I'm thinking about it, just thinking in the real world, guys, if we ever checked out Roger Federer, I mean, it's unnatural to be that good at something for that long. And did you see his own personal brand clothing with the RF? That was truly evil. Okay then, the books and stories featuring Randall Flagg. So we mentioned The Dark Man, we've mentioned The Stand from 1978 and then the uncut version in 1990. Don't need to talk too much about those. Next up we have The Eyes of the Dragon in 1984, which is set in the world of the Dark Tower, sort of set in this sort of medieval times, and Flagg in that instance is an evil wizard who has control over the kingdom of Delane. And he's a lot of fun. This kind of wizardy, evil magician type character, it really works for him. Now that ties into the Dark Tower series, but it does get a little messy at this point. So concentrate here. So in the original version of The Gunslinger, we have Walter O'Dim, Walter whatever. We also have Martin Broadcloak, who are two different characters that are not known to each other. Now Flagg is Walter O'Dim, but Martin is a different character. However, when King went back and retconned the series, he made those two just aliases of each other. So Flagg is Walter and is Martin and all of those things. So that means when you're reading across the entire book that Flagg pops up in some way in every single book and has different roles to play in all of them. As I mentioned, he's even in Wind Through the Keyhole, which was like the extra Dark Tower book released a few years after, where he is the Covenant Man. So he plays a big part in the Dark Tower series for sure. Now, he also appears in one of the stories in Hearts in Atlantis as Raymond Fiegler. He's like the leader of an activist group that Carol Gerber, one of the main characters in those stories, becomes involved with. And we know it's him not just because of the RF, but because he can make himself go dim, which is kind of like almost invisible, which is something that Walter and Martin can also both do in the Dark Tower stories. Then, as I've already mentioned, in the Gwendy's trilogy, there's Richard Farris. King disputes whether it's Flagg because he's too good. As I've already said, I think it is Flagg, so we're keeping it in there. And the last one I will throw in, it's a bit of a stretch, but in Cell, there is a character called the Raggedy Man. Now, he probably isn't Flagg, but he feels like he's at least inspired by Flagg and could well be a distant cousin or something like that. But let me know what you think. So we've covered the main stories, but the thing with Randall Flagg, and I guess this is by design because of what character he is, but he can kind of drive you a bit crazy. Because remember how Tom Cullen said he can go into the wolves and the crows? The crows in particular, man, they can drive you crazy. When you know that Randall Flagg could well be a crow, and you're reading King's works, you'll see crows popping up pretty regularly, and you'll start thinking, hang on, is that Randall Flagg? So let me just dip into my notes of just a few crows I've seen in King's works that I'm a bit suspicious by. So there's a crow mentioned a couple of times in The Long Walk, which I know is a Bachman book, but come on, Flagg would surely go and watch that particularly horrendous game show. In Needful Things, a crow is there just watching people killing each other. Surely that's Flagg. In Duma Key, there is a crow at one point just surveying stuff. Feels like that's a dark place. It would work for him. In Under the Dome, there's a crow watching stuff. Definitely Flagg. And even in the 2024 story, Two Talented Bastards, when the old guys are out in the woods, they notice one solitary crow, which for me was also Flagg. And in the Langoliers, I had in my notes that there is a smiley face sticker somewhere in the Langoliers, and that reminded me of Flagg's smiley face pin badge train that he wears in the stand. So maybe that's him as well. But this is where I definitely want your input. I'm sure there are more crows and more instances of Flagg out there. So where have you spotted someone suspicious in King's works? Let me know in the comments. Let's track down all of the instances of Randall Flagg. Now, to help you with thinking that, I dug up a few fan theories about Flagg from the internet. So some people reckon that Flagg is he who walks behind the rose in The Children of the Corn. Not for me, that one. Given that that story came out before The Stand, I just think that is a much darker, different entity. But hey, I could be wrong. Some people have also said that Flagg is the true father of Carrie White. I'm not having that. And it could be said that Mrs. Carmody in The Mist is working under the influence of Flagg, because she does say the phrase, "my life for you," quite a lot, which is what Trashman says for Flagg in The Stand. So it could be that Flagg has spotted what's going on in The Mist and is working his magic from afar, but it could also just be another level of the tower, things lining up, that weird coincidence that does sometimes happen in Stephen King's works. But again, what fan theory have you got about Randall Flagg, or what ones have you seen that have resonated with you? Do let me know. And of course, there's one from Stephen King himself. So on the 1st of April 2022, King put out there, kind of teasing fans, that Randall Flagg and Pennywise the Clown are the same being, which got people in a right tears on the internet, without them clocking the date that he put that out there, April the 1st. And of course, King did back down and say, yeah, I was just messing with you, but come on guys, pay attention. So when it comes to Randall Flagg on screen, we have had 3 versions of Randall Flagg so far. All of them have looked great, and one of them gave us a good performance in A Thing That's Worth Watching. So the good performance in The Thing That's Worth Watching is Jamie Sheridan as Flagg in the 1994 miniseries of The Stand. Yeah, he's great. The whole thing is good. And yeah, he just works brilliantly. Clad in denim, brilliant mullet. What more do you want? Then we have Matthew McConaughey as the Dark Man, or Walter Paddock, or Flagg, in the abomination that is the Dark Tower movie in 2017. And then we have Alexander Skarsgård as Flagg in the 2020 miniseries of The Stand. Again, both of those gents, absolutely dishy to look at. Pretty terrible to watch on screen though. Now, for the Dark Tower movie, we nearly got Rutger Hauer as Flagg. If that name's familiar to you, he is Barlow in the 2004 Salem's Lot miniseries remake, but he was considered too old for that movie in the end. And then when Amazon thought they were going to make a Dark Tower series, they actually cast someone as Flagg. They cast Jasper Pekkanen, but of course that series didn't end up happening. Although Mike Flanagan has said he's going to do something around the tower on Amazon, so who knows? We're going to get another Randall Flagg at some point. Who would you like to see as the next Randall Flagg? I'd really be keen to hear your thoughts on that. For me, I'm throwing out there Barry Keogh, from Saltburn. Him, yeah, he would work, right? Now, apparently, when I was researching this, Randall Flagg also appears in 11/22/63. Apparently, in the final episode, he's kind of cycling through the crowds just before, literally cycling on a bike, just before Kennedy is shot at. Now, I did not see this at all, and I very recently watched this miniseries, so I'm probably going to have to go back and check. But did you see that? Okay then, there's a whistle-stop guide to the Darkman, to Randall Flagg. As I said, let me know your thoughts on Flagg. Is he a compelling villain to you? Do you like him? What's your favourite story with Flagg in? What's your favourite Randall Flagg moment? And where might you see him coming up again in the future? Are we going to have a Randall Flagg Holly Gibney crossover? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. While you're doing all that, if you want your own Randall Flagg t-shirt that looks like a Nirvana logo, you can find it in my range of Stephen King themed band shirts. You can also check out my award-winning collection of short stories, Once More Around the Sun. And if you like this channel, you can become a constant viewer and support it directly. But of course, just subscribing makes a massive, massive difference. So there we go, that's this month's book special. Hope you enjoyed talking about the Darkman. Watch out for those crows, and I will see you again very soon.